Each site was equipped with a Titan II missile. And in the video, Chuck explained that it stood 103 feet tall. Well, to help you better visualize what 103 feet tall looks like, if you look right behind me, the pole with the crow's nest up there, the box, that's 50 feet. So the missile was 2 poles high, standing end to end. The silo in which it sat in was 150 feet deep, which is 50 feet deeper than the missile is.
After you just.
Oh, so it takes a lot of practice.
There's the blast door. Yeah, pick up the phone and call again.
Third phone over there.
Oh, that guy. All right, so we made our way down the access portal, and you're now 35 feet underground. I mentioned that up above, that this complex was built specifically to launch the Titan II. But military also realized that they had to protect their crew members as well. So, you look around, like I mentioned, 35 feet underground, you have concrete walls, steel stairwell, metal beams, and you're in a pretty secure area. But it depends on who you ask. By industrial standards, yes, you are safe. Miles and miles of rebar that vary in thickness from your finger all the way up to your wrist. They're also spaced closer together for that added strength. The walls are encased with a 1/4-inch metal shell, and the doors are made out of 12 welded I-beams. Now, these features would protect the crew and the site from the 4 primary effects of a nearby blast, and that would be heat, radiation, overpressure, which is that blast force that we saw in the video, and EMPs. The shell, the 1/4-inch metal shell, would protect or would send those EMPs down into the ground, because EMPs is a electromagnetic pulse that will send that magnetic field, or spread magnetic field across the blast area, destroying any electrical equipment or devices. So, you'll see the shock isolation here, springs and shock absorbers.
Okay, this is the second of 3 levels. This is the control center, this is level 2, this is the heart and soul of the whole operation. Now, you saw level 1 up above in the video. I think you'll agree that it's not 5-star hotel accommodations, but that's what we had, and that's what the crew used, because that's what was available to them. Now, down below was level 3, that was the location of backup equipment. There was compressors, a lot of machinery, a lot of backup radio equipment, and then 2 very important backup batteries that we'll talk about here in a few moments. Now, Susie was telling you about shock isolation. Well, at this point, basically what it comes down to is the further you get into the complex, the safer you become. And now you have reached maximum safety and security. At this point, you are now fully protected as much as you can be from a nearby blast, including the crew members. Prior to entering this area, only the equipment was, for a couple of reasons. The shock isolation is present here, just in a slightly different form. To begin with, all three floors are attached to each other. They're suspended off of each other here are attached by this post, which runs from top to bottom, and then they are suspended inside of this birdcage shaped structure, domed at the top and flat at the bottom, by way of these massive spring assemblies that you see here all the way around. There's 8 of them. So that allows for vertical shock absorption. When you crossed in, you stepped over a 12-inch gap between the floors and the walls because they're not attached either. And so that allows for lateral movement in case of a nearby blast or any shock waves that come through this area. Now these sites were operated, Chuck mentioned in the video, 4 crew members, 2 higher ranking officers, 2 lower ranking enlisted personnel. The highest ranking officer was the commander of the complex for the next 24 hours. He served 24 hours at a time, usually about 6 to 9 times a month, which worked out to about a 3 to 4 day rotation. Now, congratulations. You've just been drafted into the combat crew command. You have a seat right here. And while you're getting yourself comfortable, I'm just going to enlist you here, get your enlistment papers going.
Mommy's gonna launch the missile?
What is your first name?
Joanne?
J-O-A-N-N.
O-A-A-N-N.
J-O-A-N-N.
N-N.
Okay. I think I got that right. All right. So, here's the perks that come with this assignment, because it's not all for nothing. First of all, you get to quickly move up the ranks. Typically, commanders were captains. You're going to move up to the rank of major. How's that? Okay? You get paid more as well. Who doesn't like that, right? In fact, you get paid twice as much as Susie and I do. You see there? It says volunteer. Sorry. We're in charge of personnel, not payroll. So, there you go. But no, actually, this was prior to 1978. Over here, they were in training, someday hoping to move up the career ladder, take your place as you moved on as well. These were usually 4-year stints that the crew spent here on this assignment. So deputies were in training. However, their primary roles still in that process were to support the commander, and they were in charge of safety, security, and communications. This panel here, Susie pointed out the different radio antennas up above. You may have seen the big one out in the parking lot when you pulled up. Those are all soft, meaning that they could have been damaged or destroyed in the event of an attack or whatever other possible way. They all had backups. Underground in silos, these controls here allowed for the crew to raise or lower them as they needed to provide them with whatever communications needs they needed. This was a locator board. It allowed for the crew to account for where people were on the site, how they were moving, where they were at in the event of a safety or security situation. And then finally, the deputy commander was in charge of the launch pod. Mechanical wind-up clock. This is set to universal time. Military refers to it as Zulu time. It's set to Greenwich Mean Time in England. That puts everyone on the same time signature. There's no daylight savings times, no AMs, no PMs, no confusion, basically is what it amounts to. Military uses this to monitor or to coordinate the drills, exercises, maneuvers, including missile launches, believe it or not. They did not want the traffic jam or bottleneck effect of nuclear weapons as they were trying to get them through the same window off to their targets. So they did sequence them according to a time signature. Now the other 2 crew members, if you're mechanically inclined, you like working with tools, fixing things, then you would have been the MFT, Missile Facilities Technician. You're like the handyman here, the superintendent. You and I were assigned these top secret locks with a top secret combination. Inside the safe, the outgoing officer removed their locks. We verify contents. 2 things that we are primarily looking for. Authenticator cards, which will authenticate the launch order, and the keys, which for our purposes are already installed. Otherwise, they'd be in that safe. Once we are satisfied, we sign off, we take over the complex, the outgoing crew is free to leave at that point. Those locks get secured and they stay there, unless one of 2 things happens. We get that launch order 24 hours from now when that next crew shows up, and we repeat the process. Other than that, those locks do not move from there. One of the vital operating systems on the site, communications. I mean, that's basically what you're here for. You're here to listen for that launch order to come through, and when it does, you take the appropriate action. These here are the receivers for the 4 radio systems that provided communications to this site. Now, each of them had their own specific purpose, but yet they could all communicate that launch order if it ever came to it. Now, in the meantime, You're not just sitting here in silence waiting for that launch order. You're getting messages coming through all day long. It could be communicating with the other sites, the local Air Force Base, general information, weather updates, and so forth. Here's what you heard as each message came through. And you heard that. You just held your breath for a minute because you're thinking, oh no. And when you realize that's not the launch order, okay, life is good again. I can go home and see my family today, at least until the next one came in, because you didn't know when that launch order would have come through. We'll get back to this in a few moments. The other vital system, electricity and electronics. Susie pointed out to you that they took the extra measures to protect this whole complex with the steel shell, to protect the electricity from those electromagnetic pulses. Well, this panel here, these two panels here, those allow for you to monitor and control all the electrical services and electronics and machinery on the site. Local utility company was the primary source of electricity. Company with power outages, yes. Go figure, right? They didn't at least fix that part of it. But the Air Force realized this, so they have two backups. Massive diesel generator on that side. It kicked on at the first indication of a power fluctuation, but it took about a minute to reach full power. Well, this panel here allowed for the BMAT in particular, but the crew in general, to test that missile to make sure nothing ever went wrong. That prevented that check engine light from coming on. They could test all the operating systems, make sure that missile was always ready to go if that launch order came through. Now up here, this is what you heard. Those tipsies were ever triggered up above. Now you did not go up to investigate. That's not your job. You're not security. Instead you get on that phone and you call Air Force Patrol to come out, or Air Force Police, they come out and see what's going on. More times than not, it was wildlife.
Yeah.
I don't know how many coyotes and javelinas were escorted out of here in handcuffs, but people were rarely the problem. It was rarely people. And it didn't matter what you thought it could have been. It was never taken for granted. It didn't matter what time of day or how many times these alarms went off. They were always investigated. Now, there was two in particular. These lights told you which zones were triggered. The zone over the ventilation shaft that Susie pointed out above was triggered. Then you really paid attention, because you didn't want anyone compromising your air supply. Now, right up here against the wall, you see that big silver apparatus there? Behind there is a shaft. That's the ventilation shaft that brings air into the complex, and it's also an emergency exit. There's a ladder in there that climbs up to the top, and so you could get out. Well, behind the silver apparatus is a blast valve. Automatically would close shut in the event of a nuclear attack during the launch sequence, or the crew can manually close it. So if those tipsies went off in that zone, you're going to jump up there and close that thing off as quickly as possible until you get the all clear from Air Force Police. Out in the video, these butterfly valves, actually they're like this because the missile's this way. All four have to be open in order for that missile to enable and then to fly. Well, one of these has an electronic lockbox on one of the oxidizer lines that prevents it from opening. And the only way to open it is by entering the correct 6-digit code. Top secret. So top secret that the crew didn't know what it was, the Air Force Base didn't know what it was. It came in with the launch order itself. Now, 6 characters, but each stone wheel has 16 characters on it. So you have slightly less than 17 million possible combinations. Only one would work. And if you're over here trying to figure it out, the Air Force is going to know, because this is the only device that's actually wired to the Air Force Base, so they can either run test codes or monitor any unauthorized activity. If you're board commander and you're trying to figure it out, they're going to know, and you're going to get a call, and at the end of that call, you're probably looking through the want ads for a different job, because they do not like anybody tampering with their equipment.
And that code was on the card?
It came in with the launch order.
Oh, it just automatically flipped?
No, we'll go through that.
Okay.
You'll see. Yeah. All right, last panels. Over here, these are part of the guidance system. All cabinets here at one point were filled with electronics. You know that the evolution of electronics is very rapid, and the Air Force was not immune to the advancing technology. At one point, they had to just finally give in and say, yes, we need to upgrade. And so there was a company that was already in development of a guidance system for the 747 aircraft as they were flying over the oceans. Air Force reached out, said, hey, we need some help. So they came out, adapted the system to Type 2, modernized it all, minimalized the whole unit down to one panel. As that was the state of electronics back in the day. And this was the whole source up until the end of his career. Targeting information was entered paper punch tape, of all things. Go figure. Is it fragile? Yes. Is it limited as far as data? Yes. Is it secure? Absolutely, which is why they used it. Almost unhackable. To this day, the military still uses it for certain applications because it is so secure. Go figure. Now over here, Commander, you have the targeting lights. Which one is illuminated there? See it?
Yeah, target 2.
Target 2. Now, that's classified information, so don't say anything. Not that you could even if you wanted to, right? Because you have no idea where those targets were. That's my point. The crew didn't know, Air Force Base didn't know, nobody knew. Actually, yes, some people did know. The war planners that chose them, war planners that maintain them today, and that missile and that guidance system programmed it to fly. Now, still classified today because they may still be targets. And that's all you really knew about that. Now, you did know that it was ground burst, it was going to detonate on impact, leave a crater 3/4 to a mile wide, about 500 feet deep. So you knew you were after something deep in the ground.
Oh,
That's about it.
you knew that much? Really?
That's all you really knew. This was set for a detonation at ground burst, which was going to detonate on impact or just slightly above the surface of the Earth, just leaving a huge crater in the ground.
Was that specific to Titan II?
Yes. This one here, there was an airburst mode. If that was the case, again, the higher-ups determined what that was. You just followed the orders. If it was an airburst, it would have detonated above the surface of the Earth, would have taken out an area of about 900 square miles, about a 30-mile diameter across the circle. So if you lived anywhere within those 30 miles, that's about it for you. Pretty much any major city in the United States. Huge, huge weapon. Just in the blink of an eye. All right. So, Commander, take your notebook. I take mine. There's going to be 35 characters that are going to come across in this message, and we're going to copy all of these down. That message is going to repeat itself, and we're going to switch notebooks, and we're going to confirm that we copied this correctly. If that's the case, this is valid. We don't know who's sending it. So this is why we have to open the safe. We take out an authenticator card with the matching code that's in the message. Inside, there's further codes. If these all match, this is authentic. This is coming from the President of the United States, the only person who can authorize a nuclear attack. There is no second guessing. We get a launch time. Sir, that you asked for the very first time, we get our launch code. This is what makes it good to go. We grab the keys. I've got my hand on mine. I can't reach yours. Hopefully you can't reach mine, because if you can, you're really going to creep me out, because you got arms that go this long. Exactly. And you can't run over here to turn mine or yours, because they'll shut themselves off as soon as you release them. And lastly, they have to be held for about 5 seconds to initiate the sequence. Are you ready? Here we go. We switch notebooks. And this is valid because we've checked it. Okay? Commander, we have a valid launch order. You say, I confirm.
I confirm.
We have authenticated it. This is real, coming from the right sources. Commander, we have an authentic launch order. I confirm.
I confirm.
Commander, our launch time is now.
I confirm.
You've done this before, haven't you? Commander, we have a valid butterfly valve code. Say, I confirm.
I confirm.
Say, enter code.
Enter code.
Can you read what's highlighted in yellow for me? This would be the
Lima,
Lima,
Alpha, Uniform, November, Charlie, Hotel.
Enable. You may keep that card as a souvenir if you like.
It's like the air.
Phonetic alphabet.
Yeah.
Now you take over. You take over. Now you instruct me. You say place your left hand on the key.
Place your left hand on the key.
Check. Can you follow your own orders as well?
Which one? This one?
Put your left hand on the
Other
key.
left hand. There you
This
go.
one?
Say on my count, turn and hold.
On my count, turn and hold.
Check. Say 3, 2, 1, turn and hold.
3, 2, 1, turn and hold.
Turn the key that way as far as it'll go.
And hold
it
it.
there until you see the green light come on by your hand. Right there by your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let go. Release.
Battery active.
That's it. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. Anything else that you may know about this process is Hollywood. It's that simple. Turn those keys. No sparklers, no fireworks, no dramatic music. 58-second sequence that you cannot reverse. There's nothing you can do about it. If the president himself is calling you, just hang up. You can't do anything about this. Now, in the meantime, there are things happening, as I mentioned to you. There's that top row of lights turning on. First things first, the batteries are charging on that missile, the independent power source. That silo door is going to open across. We can't see, hear, feel it, but it crossed those tipsy radars. Guidance go. That missile now knows it's off to target 2, wherever that is, and we cannot change that.
You can't see it.
That was a valid butterfly valve code. So all 4 are now open. The oxidizer and the fuel are now flowing, and as you would expect, the engine is going to fire. And now your silo is torched. It's gone. And then finally, 4 seconds later, liftoff. 58 seconds. 30 minutes from now, about 6,000 miles away, target 2 will cease to exist, identified only by the massive crater that's left in its place, because this warhead was set for ground burst detonation. And that's the end of target 2. Now, your job isn't over. We'll talk more about that. However, for now, your 20 minutes are up. You have successfully completed your 20-minute tour. You're hereby honorably discharged.
Oh, thank you.
There's your discharge card.
Oh, thank
Can you
you.
read what it says in red?
I turned the key.
Yes, you did, and you all heard that. All right. Susie's going to take you out.
I want your kids here. Coming down the shaft. That's it.
Take that picture of that's a really popular shot. Fuel handlers. In fact, all the incidents and the most danger that was ever experienced throughout the history of this program was because of the fuels. It was never because of the warhead itself. And what you're looking at here, which may appear to you as camouflage, are patches. Each time these were used, they were taken back out to the Air Force Base, they were tested, checked for any breaches, and they were patched for reinforcement and put back into use. It was cheaper to do that than to replace each suit. Extremely uncomfortable because during the summer, especially here in Tucson, first things that went on were long johns to absorb the perspiration. There was no cooling in them, just an air pack, and that was it. During the winter, they became very stiff and very hard to move in, and so...
The bell will go off just right now. That wasn't too bad.
That's as exciting as it gets. Obviously the missile didn't launch, but had it launched, here's what you do next. Soon after turning those keys, you follow what's called a post-launch checklist. Military is about checklists and procedures. Now, on that checklist, amongst other things, you secure the site. Close that silo door if that's possible, the blast doors, everything, and you lock yourself into that control center because that is going to be your bunker. Until, then you extinguish all fires, and then you power down the essential circuits, only what you need because there is no electricity at this point. It's all been destroyed. The only thing that you have is what the batteries will give you and the diesel generator will provide. So you need to make it last. So you use only what's necessary. And then finally, you await further orders, if there's anyone left to give them. I think this gets to your question. In the meantime, you are locked into that control center. That blast valve is closed, and you are left with 4 crew members. Now, there's 8 of us, so the math is going to change a little bit, but for 4 crew members, ideally, you have about 15 to 20 days of recirculating air. That's it, because you are sealed off from up here. About 30 days of food and water. Now, if after that time period you have not heard from anybody, you have 2 choices. You can try to make your way back up to the surface, either through the access portal or that same ventilation shaft, which I mentioned has an escape ladder, but only if they're not compromised. Well, we're going to keep trying to get out until either we do or we don't. we have a fight or flight instinct. I don't think anybody would just say, okay, that's it. You know, not to go down that dark road, but that was it was what it was.
What are you guys doing? This looks nice. It's the silo and
Launch duck.
a duck. You imagine you made this to a basketball court? There's a hoop right there, hoop right
That
there.
was the oxidizer hard stand. The fuel was over there, and the oxidizer. Two chemicals they couldn't mix. If the chemicals mixed, boom.
I don't know why they can't put a basketball court. Seriously,
It looks like
that's
it could
the
be
right
based
size
as
for
a
a court right there. Down there.
Be very hard to get.
It's a glare. It's hard to see. Oh my God. Oh, hey, look down there, Dad. You make a fence work better. But in there. Here's the other side.
It's so cool.
Whoa.
Then launch, wing stabilizers, more evident from up here, you can see.
You imagine?